Ty Brady here with Brady Insurance Marketing in the Ty Brady Way. As a successful entrepreneur myself, I'm passionate in helping other entrepreneurs do the same as they rise from rags to riches and get inspired each week on the stories they tell here at the Ty Brady Way. Welcome back to another episode of the Ty Brady Way. And I have the privilege today to interview Dr. Melva Lee. Now, she listened to one of the other episodes with another interview I had and reached out and thought that she could give our listeners a lot of insight and helpful thoughts. So welcome to the show, Melva.
Thank you so much for having me on today, Ty.
The audience usually likes to know, like, what is your background? And then we'll dig into, did you say a doctor? Doctor means a lot of things. What is it? What type of doctor are you? Yes.
Gotcha. Well, first of all, I'm running for superintendent of schools here in the state of Georgia. I have over 30 years of experience in healthcare, and my background is in healthcare administration. So bachelor's, master's, and doctorate, all in healthcare administration. I've worked in everything from inpatient, outpatient, hospitals, clinics, nursing homes, you name it. I really love it. But during that time that I was an administrator or a director really at the Grady Health System, which is a large public hospital here in the state of Georgia, I had a program in my department, which is interpreting services, and found out there was a gap in providing training services to them. So I started my own company, and I did that for about 20 years, where I trained bilingual individuals to become medical interpreters. And that got me really into the world of vocational schools and the need for vocational schools, and just training our high schoolers really to be ready, workforce ready when they get out of high school. And so that's one of the initiatives that I'm running for as superintendent of schools.
I think about where I live, and there's classes where they now have these interpreting devices because of the language barrier. So they and how it's been able to help these kids get educated, right? And then they're able to and it's needed. And it's amazing to watch, technology is powerful, right? And what we're able to do with it. But you were doing it with, manual people, like teaching them, right?
That is correct. So they already are bilingual, but we teach them how to be an interpreter, which is a whole skill set altogether.
Well, the other thing I think of is my wife took a lot of sign language classes in college and in high school. And she was teaching my kids growing up. I have 5 kids that, sign language like milk and more, and they pick that up quicker than they can actually say it verbally.
Yes. Especially the little kids that can't verbalize things very well at first. And actually, we have a lot of sign language interpreters that work for us, so very much needed. So growing up as a kid, did you always say, hey, I want to be a doctor? Or where did you find that passion to say, okay, this is... And I think life, we get things thrown at us, right? You're like, hey, I didn't know that I was going to do this, but you found a problem and then you found a solution. But at what point growing up did you like, hey, I want to go this direction? Or what were your thoughts there? Well, the doctor thing came up very early. I remember being in 5th grade, and my penmanship is horrible. And all the other girls had these beautiful, round, pretty penmanship. And I went up to my dad and he said, don't worry about it. You're going to be a doctor. So ever since then, I was like, okay, I guess I'll have to be a doctor. And I love hospitals, but I really didn't want to be a medical doctor. But I really liked more the administrative side of things. And so that's really where that desire came about. But as far as my school, that came, like I said, just out of necessity because, needing to train my interpreters that I had in my hospital and not really being able to find a suitable solution. And so I thought this has to change. And whenever I see a problem, I want to be part of the solution.
So walk me through that. So you have patients that come in, there's a language barrier. So you saw that you couldn't communicate properly, right? Is that what I'm understanding? And then you're like, hey, we got to fix this. And that's what you're like, I'm going to solve this problem.
So in our case, we already had the interpreters at our facility to provide that service, but they weren't qualified. And so you don't want to have someone that's just bilingual in your facility. You want to make sure that their language has been tested for both English and the other language that they're going to be interpreting for them. And then and they have to be at least an intermediate or advanced in both. And then you also want to make sure that they have the proper training. And these are all regulations according to the civil rights laws, that you have to have trained and qualified interpreters in your facilities. And now with the advent of certifications, which I was a very integral part of that, a lot of hospitals are even requiring that on top of it. But at the time, this was in the early 2000s, there was not as many training programs as you would think, especially in the South. They had them in California and in the Northeast, but very few in the South. So I started my own program, and that is what the training program that I started in the vocational school that I had for about 20 years. I've now moved on to just providing the services. I do remote phone and video interpreting services. But at the time, for about 20 years, I did the vocational schools.
Wow. I've worked in Atlanta, downtown Atlanta. I've been to the Global Mall and all the different backgrounds and people. I mean, from all different walks of life, country. I was amazed. And I think somebody told me it's like 150,000 square feet mall. And I mean, I got lost in there. And the variety of things that I was able to find, because I'm in the insurance business, and there was an agent that reached out and said, hey, I want to start helping people aging into Medicare. And it took me a minute to find him, but he was just in a little, I swear it was like 10 by 10 little cubicle, and that's what he worked out of. And it was fascinating just to see that culture and how it all worked.
Yes, for sure.
So you go from your dad saying, hey, you're going to be a doctor, don't worry about it. Was your family a doctor, or that's just what your dad? Wow.
Yeah, I was one of the first in my family to obtain a college degree. We had a lot of people that were proud, had trade school certifications, but very few with college degrees. So that was one of the first things that by the time I was a freshman in high school, I knew that I wanted to go on to college for sure.
And then you see this need for interpretation, which leads me to my next point. When did you decide, hey, I'm going to run as a superintendent for the schools? And is it all Georgia, correct?
Correct. It's for the state of Georgia. I decided this maybe 3 years ago. And this was after, in consultation with some friends and just looking at the state of what we're really dealing with the current superintendent of schools. Our records, our ratings really here in the state of Georgia just have decreased under the current superintendent. He's been in office 11 going on 12 years. And we are 38 out of 50. That's a decline under his tenure. 70% of our fourth graders are not proficient in reading. That's a decline under his tenure. 76% of our eighth graders are not proficient in math. That's a decline under his tenure. So like I said, whenever I see a problem, I believe that I can be part of the solution. And that is when I decided and have been, campaigning and doing, just getting my name out there. Obviously now with the primary coming up in May, it's been a lot more speeches, a lot more, interviews, going out there, knocking on doors, all of those things.
Yeah, well, I ran for mayor and lost, which is okay. And that was a learning curve in itself. And, I talked to some campaign advisors, and they're like, hey, if you have this many residents, you need this many dollars. And it's expensive. And it isn't any type of service, superintendent, mayor, any of those. It is a not rewarding, meaning you get all the ugly, right? And all the good. And all you want to do is do good and be good. And you see a problem, you're like, hey, we can't keep going the direction. And that was my thought. I said, had I seen some things where I felt like we were going in the right direction, I wouldn't have been in the running. But even the fact that I ran put pressure on the current mayor and the city council to realize, hey, we got to be careful what we do. And that's a win in my book. And it's you putting pressure from the outside. And I also think that people in any type of government there needs to be limits. And otherwise people, they can't be bought, right? Or push an agenda. They've got to get in, do their best and get out. But, It's the people vote, right? They make the choice. So you got the primary in May. How many people? So then you got to go to the general. How many people are in the primary?
So there's 5 of us in the primary, including the incumbent, which I think is very healthy because, as I mentioned, he's been in office going on 12 years. And the last 2 elections, if I'm not mistaken, he did not have a challenger during the primary phase. So that's a change all of its own. But I'm like you, Ty. I think that there should be term limits from the very top all the way to the bottom, from the federal government, your senators, your congressmen, all the way to the local level. If we have more, term limits, we can have more effective leaders, right? Not only will they go in with an agenda and making sure that they get things accomplished, right, rather than just sitting on a title and just cruising. But it'll also prevent them from getting too cozy with lobbyists and other people that will want to buy influence. And so I think that will solve so many issues. And as you know, going against an incumbent is very expensive because they've had years and years to have a massive war chest. And so we really need that would be the first thing that we should do for campaign reform, is to have term limits.
When you say they can be persuaded, bought, or push their certain agendas, it solves a lot of those problems. And I mean, the other thing I think should happen in all types of government is, honestly, I think they should pay some people a little more, and you can get a higher quality person like yourself in there that's run a business. You run hospitals successfully, and then also started a business when you saw a problem and you came up with a solution. And then letting people remind people that you are their voice. I voted for you because I want you to be my voice. And I voted for you because of the values and your mentality and what you were campaigning for. So it's been interesting. And I don't know, people are like asking me, like, Ty, are you going to run again? I'm like, I don't know. Right now, I ran because, I believe in God, and God said, hey, you should run. So I ran. And the outcome was the outcome. And I think it served its purpose, and letting, I think, people in my current area know that someone's watching.
Correct. Yes. And I actually ran for state senate a few years ago, and that was very instrumental. I took those lessons and I've applied it to this race. And so there's no such thing as failure in my book. Every situation is a learning experience, and it just makes you a better candidate next time if you choose to run.
Oh, absolutely. Failure is you're always learning, and there is no failure in my book either. When in the state of Georgia, I mean, what's the school district like? As a superintendent, I mean, how many kids is that? I'm just curious.
Well, we have quite a bit of counties and millions of children, right, under the jurisdiction of the Georgia Superintendent of Schools. I would say that the number one job, I believe, as the Georgia Superintendent of Schools would be that of leadership. So oftentimes, I did a speech just last night, and they said, well, you have your work cut out for you. How are you planning on doing this? And I said, number one thing I have to do is provide leadership, right? A vision and prioritize what things need to be done. I would say that number one priority is getting our children literacy rates, up again, right? Because if they can't read, they can't do anything else. There's no advancement in math. There's no advancement in history and science if you can't read. Also, I believe we need to focus on those high schoolers right before they're graduating, and making sure that they are workforce ready. So those would be my 2 top priorities. Now, my initiatives are school choice. I want to see an expanded school choice. We have a school choice program that passed a few years ago, or last year rather. I didn't think it went far enough, too many red tape and strings attached. And then also just as mentioned, as far as the trade schools, I'd like to see every high school student graduate with a trade school certification.
That gives me chills. I have a daughter that is going to a program called JATC. and she's in the automotive class and the auto body class. And nothing that I, chose or just said, it's something that she wanted to do. And we ended up buying a little car for her because she wants to do the auto body work on it. And I think it's phenomenal. And she keeps going to these apprentice to like collision repair places, right? And a lot of them after they're like, hey, you can get a job right out of high school if you want. And then there's additional programs that she can compete in if she qualifies. I mean, trades are needed. And I had someone on the show. It reminded me of a guy I had on the show a few episodes ago, and he was in the trades for the technology industry. And he says, it used to be that the trades didn't get paid as well. And he developed a program with the local high school to get these kids trained for when they can get a certificate, right? And then go to work. And he says their wages have increased by almost 80%.
That's amazing.
And that's because it's needed. I mean, that labor force. But I think your fundamental thing you said but they have to be able to read.
Correct. Yes. If we can make sure that the fundamentals are taken care of, we're not doing our jobs. We have these children from K through 12, and we need to, at the very least, give them the basics. And that's basically what Mississippi did. They went from 50th to the top 10. And what did they do? They focused on the basics, going back to phonics for reading and making sure that arithmetic, they're giving the kids the basics that they had, that we used to be able to achieve great things with, 40, 50 years ago. And then we started changing things up and bringing in new math and doing away with phonics. And now we're reaping the rewards of that.
Yeah. For me, I'm almost pushing 50. And when I was going to school, I'm dyslexic. It is very difficult I had to learn to sight read. And I think they've done a lot better learning the different learning styles of kids, right? And pushing. And then I was a foreign exchange student abroad, and it was my 9th grade year, and I was there for a year. And the way they do it in Europe is, where I was going in the Netherlands, is you test. Wherever you test, you get put in the appropriate class for English, math, whatever. And when you hit 9th grade, then you have a choice to go to a trade school, just like you're talking about, or continue on and then go to college. So, they're getting that ingrained in them so that they can go out and be successful. Because and I know that if somebody's uneducated, what's most likely going to happen? They're going to get in trouble. They're going to be in prison, right? They're not going to, because they don't feel like they can provide, and they're going to find ways to provide in the wrong way. And it's critical.
Correct. Yes, we have a very short window of time to make sure that they're instructed. Well, I don't know if you know this, by 3rd grade, prisons are built based on the amount of illiterate children that they find in the 3rd grade. So a prison knows that if that child has not learned how to read by 3rd grade, they're most likely going to have a life of crime. And that is, that is just how morally responsible we are for our children's education. And so it's not just numbers to me, it's children and their futures. And we don't need someone at the helm that wants to just coast. We need people in there that want to fight for our children's future.
Oh, agreed. What do you say your biggest, the one thing you're working as the incumbent, he's been in 11 years. And what I was told when I was going against an incumbent, and they said, hey, your biggest challenge is he's had 4 years of, campaigning. You got 11.
And name recognition, correct.
Yes. Yeah. And you got 11. So, as people listen, if they're in the state of Georgia, because this hits all 50 states, 13 different countries. And if you know anyone in Georgia, I think they should take a listen. We need strong leaders. And we need people that have been outside in the world, I said the real world, and have experience where they have passion and purpose, where they can help solve problems. But how can they help you, and how can they help you?
Okay. They can go to my website, drmelvalee.com. That's DRNELVALEE.com. I've got speeches there. I've got my podcast interviews there, my social media handles. But obviously, if they're in the state of Georgia, they can vote for me. I want them to vote for me. If they're not in the state of Georgia, they can donate to my campaign. We talked about financing and how important that is. I've also got my books on there. So if they'd like to pick up a book, I've written several, values-based books. So I would love their support in any way that they can.
I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show today. Any last thoughts you'd like to leave?
I would say that for everyone, if you have children, take literacy very important. Every child can learn. Some children learn very differently than others. You talked about your dyslexia. Every child can learn. We just need to make sure that we are intently looking at their learning style. And if you don't have a child, adopt one. Don't, when there's your niece or your nephew, just take them and do some reading with them. And it's just so important that they know that adults are invested in them and they care about their futures.
I'd like to say I'm good at it, but I'd probably say not as good. But telling my kids, hey, take 15 minutes a day and read a book. And one of the actual things that I committed to do this year with my New Year's resolution is read more. And
Yes.
it's still a challenge to this day just to read. And so one of the things I've done is I turned on the captions on the TV and read, forcing myself to read it's a muscle memory. And then sight reading is sight reading for me made me remember faces and my wife. So I take my dyslexia as a blessing. Because she's like, you see somebody, and 5 years from now, you can tell me who it is, where you met them, and the conversation you had with them. And I'm like, and she's like, how do you do that? I'm like, I don't know. And I said, honestly, I think it's growing up as a kid. We just had to learn to sight read. And
Yes.
I remember taking a spelling test, and my mom would sit down, and I would memorize it, and I'd get 100% of my spelling test over and over and over again, and it just trained that muscle memory. Because I wish I could figure out how to hear the vowels, and they're sounded out. I'm like, I don't hear it. It's I hear it, but I don't hear it. It's the weirdest, crazy.
Got it.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ty. I really enjoyed this conversation.
As always, share, like, and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Ty Brady Way. As always, share, like, and subscribe. Go to Instagram at ty.r.brady. And as always, love hearing from you. And let me know what you want to learn on the show or what you'd like me to bring up on the show. Thanks.
You can find the Ty Brady Way on Instagram as well as Facebook. To stay connected with giveaways and Ty himself, go ahead and follow at ty.r.brady on Instagram as well as Facebook. This podcast was recorded, edited, and produced by Whitney Face Media Marketing. And the theme music is an excerpt from Hot Chicken of the Woods by Isaac Joel.